Welcome to Shorty SuperCoach, and today I want to take a look at Tommy Rockliff, do a bit of a player profile on him. If you haven't caught any of these player profiles so far, it's where we take a look at the pros and cons of some of the more popular players on the eve of SuperCoach 2017. Now Rockliff, you'll have to pay a bit of coin for him. He's at 603,000, and a lot of people and a lot of coaches would have written him off many a time after being burnt in recent seasons by him. But he has been pleased with the coaching appointment. He's staying at the Lions. He's been happy with that. There was a bit of conjecture about that he may have been leaving and was seeking a trade, but he's seemingly happy now at the Lions, and I feel that given he's had a good pre-season, he's certainly worth talking about. So he's currently in only 6.3% of sides, which I was a little surprised about. I think when I first had a look into these ownership percentages, he was around the 12 mark, and seemingly his, I guess, lackluster JLT Community Series has really brought that ownership down a little bit. The likes of Zorko and Beams, who have really shone through the last month or so for Brisbane, have perhaps overshadowed him at the moment, but I still think he's a very relevant selection. Now his pros, well, they're pretty clear cut, aren't they? He's as big a scorer as there is in the game. He produces unbelievable numbers, tackles, contested possession, clearances, and just accumulates the ball like no other. He really does have as big a ceiling as there is in the game. Now 2014 is a prime example of why we would like to pick him. He played 18 games there for an average of 132. Now it's unbelievable. He can outscore anyone in the comp. I mean, probably Ablett was the main rival to him, but Rockliff at his best, he's one of those few players who is capable of a 200 and is certainly capable of regular 130s. Now, since or after round 11 last year, I'll read out some of his mammoth scores. Now, of course, after an injury-interrupted first half to the season, he returned against Carlton with a bang, 48 touches, 204 SuperCoach points. Round 13, 130. Round 17, 130. Backed that up with a 154, and then ended the last three games with 159, 102, and 133. And in that second half of the season, he only went under 100 twice, which is 81 and 92. So he certainly can go absolutely bonkers and go enormous on the points tally. Finds the ball like no other, tackles hard, in and under mid. And I think that's the exact reason why we would be picking him, is because he certainly has the potential to be a top 3 scorer across the season for our midfield, if not the whole game. Now the cons and the main concerns are also quite clear, and it's what has made Rockliff a bit of a bad name in SuperCoach circles at times. He's let us down with his inconsistency in playing matches. Of course, his last 3 seasons have returned games tallies of 17, 16 and 18, so he always seems to miss a few. Now, he has had a few hamstring problems, I'll admit that, but he also has had a bit of unfortunate instances where, what was it, ribs, and I think he even may have had something else that he broke. So a bit of unlucky accidents there. So while he has had a bit of suspect hamstrings at times, I think it's also worth noting that he has just had some unlucky instances, and that has also caused us to, maybe blacklist him a little bit. But I think the return of Beams as well is something we've probably got to consider, and I don't think that'll affect him too much. I mean, just looking statistically, there isn't any signs that it will help or hinder him significantly. There isn't a massive sort of sample size to go from where they're in the same team, but I really think Zorko, Beams and Rockliff could be an outstanding combination. And while we might not see an average of 132, because naturally he won't be shouldering as much of the load, but he will equally have those days where, the opposition looks to attend to, say, a Zorko or a Beams, and Rockliff gets absolutely off the chain. I think it's interesting when we talk about, is it better to have just one midfielder in a reasonably strong midfield, but he's the clear dominant one, or in a strong midfield and, do they steal points? It's a real tough one. I mean, you can make arguments for both cases. I mean, we saw Lachie Neale, absolutely relished the opportunity to get such a workload through him last year, scored big points. Zach Merritt scored big points when he was largely just the main man, and you just get time and time again in the centre bounces, everything goes through you, you get the first chance to tackle at the ball drop, hence you get more points and opportunity for those points. And then you've got the other case, like say Sydney Swans midfield, where you've got your Kennedy, Parker and Hanbury all going 110 plus, and we've seen it before with the likes of Gary Ablett, Bartel, Joel Corey, Dane Swan, Scott Pendlebury and Dane Beams for that matter, and Sidebottom as well. We certainly do see it, so don't be put off by thinking that, well, Beams and Zorko are going unbelievably well, that probably means Rockliff will just average 105. Doesn't always work like that, and look, Rocky is certainly in the thick of my calculations. As for my verdict, as I've mentioned, I think he should be one to strongly consider. He is somewhat of a POD at the moment, which I didn't think he would be, and he's definitely been in my side at times and is probably a front runner to get one of those top 5 midfield positions for those premium status fellas. I think the fact that we can get him at around 600k, which isn't cheap by any means, but his ceiling is enormous. He has had a very good pre-season. Of course, before the JLT matches, all the talk was that he was tearing it up and looking as fit as ever. You know, he didn't set the world on fire through JLT, but I don't think we should be put off big time by that. You know, I think he's been outshone by Beams and Zorko, but even in his last match, he did have 20 touches and 7 clearances, which I think was nearly a game high, or at least not too far off Beams, who dominated, and that was from about 70% of game time, and we can expect low 80s to 85% game time come the real stuff for Rockliff. So any thoughts too around him maybe playing forward? Look, fair enough, but I don't see that happening across a consistent basis. I mean, you don't waste the cream of the crop in the forward line. Yes, he's pretty handy one-on-one, and maybe he might spend 5 more minutes more than a Dane Beams in the forward line, just because Rockliff does have that ability to kick a goal like a Martin or a Fife. I don't think they're just going to sit him forward. You know, Brisbane aren't in a position to do that. Yes, they've got a reasonably strong midfield and it runs pretty deep, but those 3 players have the ability to be one of the best inside mid combinations and, you know, clearance combinations for that matter, and absolutely dominate in the engine room. So I don't see why they'd be wasting him forward, which at times has been something that we've had to consider with him, with Voss. You know, they wanted to play him forward, but the fact that Rockliff is seemingly content where he's at in his football career, seems pleased with the coaching appointment, says to me that he's in a good headspace, he's enjoying what he's being told from the Brisbane hierarchy, and we know he wants to play midfield. And I think the back half of last year, in combination with his scoring history, in combination with what has been a full fitness of a pre-season, I think really makes him a very good selection. So I think he should be on your radars, that for sure, and certainly a guy that we consider strongly. So let me know your thoughts on Tom Rockliff. Of course, many people would have put a line through him many times in the past, and as is often the case, our bias kicks in and we go, I will never pick that man again. He almost falls in with Shawnee Higgins and the likes, but I think we should give him another chance, so certainly consider him. But if you enjoyed the video, then certainly give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying what I'm doing here. Next up, we'll take another look, continuing these player profiles, at a man who's also in the midfield, also been pretty popular. Is returning from injury. He's a former top pick, and I think he's one that's caused a bit of debate. He's in an awkward price range, but is popular, so worth considering. I'll talk about him next, so thanks for tuning in, guys, and I'll catch you soon.